Loh Druid is a new archetype in the Angora expansion. The idea behind the deck is to get at the low as soon as possible, and then once you do, you're able to combo it with Ceaseless Expanse plus the Playground Giants to be able to create massive board swings. If you're playing against another Druid, you want to make sure that you're keeping your Ceaseless Expanse for the turn that they will be playing out their massive board swing, because when you use the Ceaseless Expanse plus the carrier, in general, you're able to get a massive tempo onto your opponent. You're able to deal a lot of damage to them as well, because it ends up dealing 16 damage coming from the carrier, and the Ceaseless Expanse obviously means that you get the board clear onto them as well. The cards that you want to mulligan for in this deck is you're looking for new heights, you're looking for basically all your ramp, you're also looking for any of your cards that can get minions, because in general you're trying to get those out as quick as possible to deal as much as you can to your opponent. Going into the gameplay, I am playing against a warrior, and they're using the quest in this. I end up just trying to dig as much as I can to try and get the low minion, because with it, you end up being able to, once again, as I mentioned before, get both the Playhouse Giants along with the Ceaseless Expanse out, and it does cause a lot of difficulty for your opponent to be able to deal with it. So going into the game, that's the idea of what I got, and luckily with the Xavius I was able to get low, so next turn I'll be able to get the combo down if I need to. The next turn also will involve playing down those minions that are there as well, just to try and deal with what they've got. The 225 isn't too much of an issue, because in general I'm going to play down low, the Ceaseless Expanse will then be able to clear it, and then I'll also be able to get the Giants down onto the board as well, so it will deal quite a lot to what my opponent could potentially be threatening on the board. So they end up playing down their ham, and it does deal with a bit of it. I didn't play down the second Playhouse Giant just because I was thinking that it would more than likely be. I was thinking that it would more than likely be dealt with a brawl or something. So I didn't want to go too wide into that, especially since I didn't have too much else to play. Unfortunately, it would have been lethal if I had have used it, but it is what it is for it. The carrier is doing quite a lot as well of what I need it to do. They end up using the brawl here, so it's a 3 in 7 chance that I'll end up getting what I need to. Besides, I still do have the swipe in my hand anyway, and with it hitting the carrier, it probably is the best of those minions, so they end up just conceding from there. And then, so it has a lot of power in terms of if you're playing against decks that are a bit slower, but the decks that are more aggressive, you'll notice that it is a little bit more difficult to manage. Going into this game, I am playing against a Druid again, so Druid once again is going to be one of those matches where you're looking at dealing with the same sort of matchup as what I'm using, so a very similar sort of deck archetype. So with that in mind, I do need to make sure that I'm considering what I could be coming up against in terms of their ramping. I did end up having quite a good hand for ramping. I have obviously the Barnabas, I have the Trail Mix, I have New Heights and things like that. The card that I'd be looking for, if I had the location, I'd be using the Trail Mix to make it so it's ready for me. Fortunately, I used Barnabas just then, and it did get me the low, so I am sitting in a very strong position. And then next turn, I'm going to be using New Heights to be able to ramp up my mana. The following turn, we'll be using the Brochure, and then probably the Trail Mix as well, just so then I've got it all sorted out with what I need to. It doesn't really matter if I use the Trail Mix or if I use the coin this following turn, but I will be getting into a very strong position. They ended up using their Trail Mix, so they'll be getting to the point where they'll be potentially dealing quite a bit to me. And the reason why I used the Trail Mix there is if they had some sort of tech to stop a spell, it could potentially have threatened my board and made me go a lot slower into this turn. So obviously it is a much more safe and much stronger play to be getting those out and ready to go. they end up just using their Loh, and then they deal face damage with it, so they're more than likely going to be playing down the Ceaseless Expanse here with considering their board state that they have. And then it will probably be with the carrier as well. It definitely was a smart play of them just playing down the Loh and then not going extremely wide. They end up playing down the Ceaseless Expanse, and then they do play down the carrier, as I mentioned, and that deals 16 damage coming from hand. And if I hadn't of this turn drawn into my Ceaseless Expanse, this game would have been significantly more difficult. I would have probably had to go for the dragon rather than playing down my own carrier, which would have then obviously put me in a significantly worse position than I could have been in. And with the current board state now, I am in such a strong position that they'll need to play down their own dragon more than likely to be able to deal with what I've got. Or they're not in a very strong position to be worrying about it. Like, they did get the Zilliax, but that doesn't really mean too much to me. The way that I'm going to be trading is I'm going to use the 2/4/1s going into the Zilliaxes, and then I'll use the swipe to go face afterwards. It means that I lose the least amount of damage coming from that. And then obviously it's the best in terms of dealing with that board that they potentially could have coming from it too. So it does mean that with the extra swipe it goes down to 16, and then the carrier will be able to get the extra damage and get lethal onto them. The reason why I used the extra hero power was obviously just to complete the quest, so I could get that done for me. So it keeps building up towards it. Going into this game, I am playing against Hunter, so quite often the Hunters that are being played is that they're using the Handbuff Hunter. So in general, you're still following a very linear game plan. It's very similar to how Dungar Druid used to be played, so you used to just keep ramping up until you got to your big minions, and instead of them coming out of your deck, they're coming out of your hand, so it's pretty similar in terms of that sort of idea and that sort of game plan. The Hunter that you do come up against is using Handbuff Hunter, so the phaser is quite a useful card, especially for dealing with potentially large minions they could be playing. I used the Barnabas here as well, and I did get Loh as well, which is really good for me. Once again, Loh is more than likely going to get nerfed, simply because of the fact that with it reducing everything down to 5 mana, it does make it things like the Playhouse Giant and also Ceaseless Expanse in particular, they are a lot more powerful and a lot more unregulated than they really should be. The player that I'm playing against did get a reserve spot out, so they are sitting with quite a strong board, and obviously it's not the most ideal situation for me. They are going quite greedy in terms of their setup, simply because of the fact that they do have they didn't just slam it down onto the board, because it really should have just been played straight away, since they had 2 reserve spots. But I believe that they had another minion in their hand, which is the reason why it didn't reduce down the cost. So with that, and them sitting on the 13/14s, it does put me in a pretty difficult situation to be in. I do have ways to deal with it. With the Innovate, I can get rid of one of them, and I can also use the phaser to get rid of the other. And then with the to dormant the other. And with that, I then do want to get some taunt minions out as well. So I'm using down the Wild God, and then I'm playing and getting just 2 of the taunts and then 1 of the 1/3s. It means that I can trade into one of the minions while also making the other one go dormant. So I do just put the trade through and then let them have their turn. With the carrier in my hand as well, it is quite a strong card going into the match too, simply because even if they do start getting a really big minion again, I will now be in a position that I can potentially be able to deal with it. They summon another 2 of the 9/8s down. I do use the Barnabas here to draw a card, and with the frack, I just check to see if it does have the damage done to the minions, which it does. In general, it's quite a strong board clear, and it does do quite a lot. And then that leaves the opponent with a difficult sort of situation to be in. with the amount of cards that you draw and the damage that you deal and the AoE clear and things like that, it obviously is very powerful to deal with a lot of your opponent's aggressive board state. And you'll see that I did end up getting the entire clear onto them. So it means that they are sitting in such a weak position because I am also able to send a bunch of damage into their face. It leaves them with just 3 health. Since I have Swipe in my hand, I do have guaranteed lethal. I end up clicking the hero power as well, just because I do want to make it so the hero power, I complete that hero power quest that's there. But the Swipe would obviously do the same sort of job since they're only on the 3 health, and they're not really posing any sort of health or threat towards my board that's here as well. So I just use the hero power here. It doesn't really matter if it hits or not, because even if it didn't, I'd still be able to hit into the 13-14 with my 6 damage minion and then hit with the 5. So I had guaranteed lethal on board anyway, even without the Swipe. If they, as you can see, they did try and add me, so I'm assuming that that was to try and say that I was doing something. That was lucky with the hero power or something. But yeah, like going into the next game, I am playing against a Mage. In general, the Mages are a little bit slower this expansion because they are trying to get the Discover spell, but it ends up just playing so many cards down, like it's just ridiculous once you get to the turn where you have the weapon that ends up getting all the Discover and the casting. It's just, there's so many different interactions that end up occurring that you'll notice that the Mage's turn does take quite a long time. Yeah, because they play down their Astrobiologist. This is getting them another Discover sort of thing for their quest. And then I just use my new heights here. I'm just trying to ramp. I'm not in any sort of real threatened position to have to deal with them. And it doesn't really matter too much what they end up doing here as well, as long as I'm just getting my board ready as quick as possible. With the secret that they have, I do just use the coin here, just in case it is the counterspell, which obviously it was. There are only a few secrets in Standard at the moment, and with I'm pretty sure there's only 4 secrets for Mage in Standard at the moment, which means that it's very highly likely they'll choose one of the ones that they want in that particular situation. And with nothing sitting on my board, it more than likely would be a counterspell. There isn't really any of the other 3 that would be much use towards them. And then they obviously get another Discover down with that as well. I end up getting the location, so I just hit the location here. It draws me an extra card, and then I'm also going to here use the I think I end up using the Trail Mix here. Yeah, I use the Trail Mix here just to be able to get extra mana into the next turn if I need it. It means if I do draw low, I will be able to use it next turn. I do have the Innovate sitting in my hand anyway, so it means that I can get to a stronger position if I need to anyway. I'm not really too concerned about what they could potentially be doing here. I draw into a carrier. Once again, I use the Innovate here just to check to see if it's a counterspell again. I didn't want it to be a counterspell if it was, to block my new heights. And then I just get low here. They end up having Explosive Runes, which does clear my Xavius, and then I just trade into the 2-1. So next turn I'll be able to play the lowdown. I do have the Playhouse Giant as well in my hand, which will be useful for this next turn as well. And the carrier will be useful in the following turn. So I am sitting in quite a strong board position. They will be getting their Discover ready for in the next turn or two, which isn't too much of a problem for me. And then I do just activate the location here so I can get my cards online. I play down the Playhouse Giant. I just go face with my into the 4-2, and then I just use the Swipe. It doesn't really matter too much if I take too much damage in this match, because they aren't really threatening too much damage on board. A lot of it's just going to come from random Discover cards and things like that. So in general, having more damage dealt to them is more important, just because of the fact that they will start getting more stuff onto their board and clearing more of my stuff and things. And the carrier will obviously be able to deal quite a lot to them too. But yeah, as I mentioned just before, like, it is going to be a very slow sort of game to be trading into them and dealing and battling into them and such. They end up using a bunch of their different discover cards to obviously get set up and get sorted. And then it obviously is just getting more and more stuff being casted onto the board and sent out, and there's a lot of just stuff that just happens using this. They end up freezing my Loh, so they're able to get it onto their board, which is fine. Like, I'm not too concerned about that. The next turn that they will be having will potentially be a little bit concerning for me, but we'll wait and see what ends up happening for it. I end up just playing down the carrier here just to be able to deal some damage to them, and yeah, like, it's not too much of a concern for me, but I will just have to wait and see what ends up happening for it. So going into the next turn, I do have quite a wide board, which means that I am sitting in quite a strong position. But they obviously do have a lot of discover spells that they can end up getting, and with that discover spell that they just use, they get Yogg in the Box, and then they also, I think, get the one that deals the AoE to the board, so it is going to be a bit of a slog in terms of this game for me. Yeah, so I am sitting in I'm sitting in a little bit of a weaker position than I'd prefer, but it is going to be one of those things where we'll have to wait and see what ends up happening for it. So with the board state that I do have, with the carrier sitting on there, it is going to deal damage over time to them, and it is something that is going to be quite strong. So when I do all of my plays, I need to consider the fact that I do have it on my board and in my hand to deal with a potential threat that my opponent may have. I use the swipe here just to be able to clear the board that's there, and then I use the brochure just to get some more minions onto the board for me. It means that I can set up for future turns as well, and since as I mentioned before, I do have carrier, it can deal quite a bit of damage into them, so I don't have to worry too much about what potentially may be there for me. The next turn, I do have the other choices as well. I did draw onto my Forest Lord, my Wild God, so I'll be able to deal more damage to them as well if I need to. I do have the dragon in my hand as well, so that will be able to clear anything that potentially could come up onto their board. And then I also, with the Playhouse Giant too, it means that I can create a wider board into them as well. They end up playing down their Exarch. The idea behind it is they're going to try and get a few different of their discover cards that come from it. I'm not really too concerned about it, simply because if they do get stuff, then it won't really pose too much of a threat to my carrier, and my carrier is, essentially carrying through this game of what I need to be doing, so I'm not really in too much of a concern, and I'm not really too concerned about what they potentially could be threatening on board towards me as well. The malfunction ends up coming out, which is fine. Since they had used the AoE coming from the Shaman, it would have put some of their minions into their deck, which meant that they didn't obviously have the clear there, and then they just keep playing their cards down. So the game is pretty much over from this sort of state. I do have the carrier on board still. Obviously, actually, I did end up getting cleared just then, so that makes it a little bit trickier for that, but I do have a pretty strong board here. I just play down the Playhouse Giant just to test what the spell is. It's none of those spells for it, and then I just use the Blazing in it. I use the Blazing, and it ends up summoning a bunch of the stuff onto their board. The cards that come from it isn't too much of a big deal. I do obviously have the carrier that's here as well, and with the carrier being in my hand, I end up it will be able to get me the lethal this turn because of the fact that it will deal all those minions towards their face, because they probably do have the ice barrier, which they did, and that will end up obviously running out now because of the fact that when it does end up getting used, I'm still dealing the 16 damage to their 14 health that would be there. If you've enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, and bye for now.